All right, guys, what we're going to do is some Boolean functions. We're going to make some really simple ones. So we're going to start with part one, and we are going to call this a simple Boolean function. Okay, so what we're going to do now, guys, we're going to write some functions that we can call upon to go ahead and do the Boolean for us, so we're not writing them over and over again, right? We can set up some conditions ahead of time. We can put some parameters in there, and then we can do some comparisons or conditionals if we need to, okay? When we write, this is just sort of a tendency. It's not required by any means, but when we go ahead and define a function in Boolean, we have a tendency to put the word is in front of it. Okay, like it's an assessment, like is it true or false, right? Okay, so I'm going to give you some sort of funny names here, but just because it sounds good. All right, so I'm going to define my first function here, and it's going to be called is big. Okay, is it big or is it not big? All right, so because it's Boolean, right? We're going to have one or the other. Is it big or is it not big? And I'm going to put in the parameters x and y because I want to compare somehow x and y in some way. Okay, so don't forget to put your colon on there because we are defining a function. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to say is if we take x and y and maybe multiply them together, okay, in this case, so I'm going to say x star y, x times y, and I'm going to say, in this case, if that is larger than 1,000, I'm going to call that big, okay? So if x times y is greater than 1,000, I'm going to print, so if that statement is true, I'm going to print that is a big number, okay? Now, I know because I gave you an example the other day, you guys know we can do Boolean with strings, right? We are saving that for a little bit later when we deal with strings a little bit more because it is slightly more complex. But we already did it with our north, south, east, and west the other day when we were doing our conditionals, in particular our chained conditional, okay? All right, so what I'm going to say is if x times y is greater than 1,000, if that's true, we're going to say that's a big number. If it's false, we're going to say else. In this case, we are going to print how about that's not too big. There we go. That's not too big. All right. That's totally arbitrary, by the way. I don't a big number like is 1,000 a big number? Not if we're talking like milligrams, right? All right, and yeah, it's really quite small. I'm just making this to be sort of a goofy one because I really like the definition name is big. All right. So there we go. There's my function, guys. Now all I need to do is call it, right? So I'm going to call that, if you guys remember how, just say is big. And I need to put my parameters in there. I'm going to say 45 and 108. Okay, I've just made those numbers up. So you can put whatever you want in there. All right. Now I can run this. And just a reminder, guys, that the first thing it's going to do is it's going to go is big. It's going to take these parameters, it's going to put them into the function. It's going to multiply them together, look to see if it's over 1,000, and then run the Boolean from there. Hey, is it big or not? All right. So you guys can go ahead and hit F5 and run that. And that is a big number. All right. I could go back and change it if I wanted to. I'm going to make this 33 and run it again. And that is also a big number. I'm going to make this one 10. Okay. Run it again and say, oh, that's not too big. Okay, so good. My program works, right? My function is working at this point. All right, so there's your first one. It's no different than anything we've done, guys. It's just Boolean right here. It just happens to be inside a function is all. Now, I do want to point something out at this point, okay? I'm gonna put some space in here. And this is a bad function. Can anybody tell me why it's not a great one? It works, but it's not great. What's the problem with it? Well, we don't know the answer. That's true. It's pretty arbitrary. But there's something I did in here that I actually told you guys the other day. It's not a great idea to do this in a function. Yeah, it's a print function. This sucker is a chatterbox. So I'm going to put that out to the side. This is a chatterbox function. And I'm going to show you how we can do this in a much nicer way. So I'm going to say not great here. We don't really want to write chatterbox functions like that unless there is a really good reason to do so. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make a second function. And in this case, rather than we're going to actually include Boolean within the function, And then we're going to include it outside of the function as well. So here we go. So this is hashtag part 2. And I'm going to say if statements using Boolean functions. All right. And I'm going to show you how we can make really, really tidy functions using this, okay? Since our last definition was is big, this definition is going to be called is little, okay? And I'm going to put some parameters in here, A and B. You could use X and Y again if you wanted to. I'm just not, okay? All right, so new definition is little. It always reminds me when I type these things, I can has cheeseburger sort of stuff, you know, I don't know why, but that's always what it reminds me of. All right, now here you go, guys. This is where it's going to be really, really tidy, okay? I'm not going to use an if-then statement, but I am going to use Boolean. So watch this. I'm going to say return, okay? A minus B in this case. It's just arbitrary. I'm doing a subtraction problem, okay? Less than 100, okay? Notice, guys, that I don't have to say if A minus B is less than 100. This is just a Boolean automatically, right? That's going to be either true or false, correct? There's going to be either that's true, right? So if I've got 50 and 10, 50 minus 10 is 40. 40 is less than 100. That's going to return a true statement, okay? If, you know, it's something bigger like 300 minus 20, right? That's 280. That's not less than 100, so that's going to return a false. All I'm asking you to do is return true or false. That's all that's really important to me, okay? And that's the entire function right there. I didn't have to put anything else in there. You can actually write a function like that that is just a return statement. It's going to say, hey, remember this information. Remember whether it's true or false. Okay. Now, outside of it, I'm going to put my if else sort of statements, okay? So I'm going to say this. If is little. In this case, I'm going to just put some numbers in there. 82, 100, okay? Okay, so if 82 minus 100 is less than 100, it's going to return true. Okay, I'm going to print. Now I'm putting my print function outside. Yep, that's little. Yep, that's little. Okay, all right. Else, okay, if it returns a false value, in other words, right, we are going to print, nope, not little. Okay. Okay. So now when I run this, it's going to go into this if statement. What it's going to do, it's going to say if is little, and it's calling is little. So it's going to go to my definition, assess that is true or false. If it's true, right, it's going to print, yep, that's little. If those numbers go in, turns out to be false, it's going to go to the else and print, nope, not little. So you guys can go ahead and run that, okay? And it says, yep, that's little. Let's go in and put something that would be over 100 just to test it out. 800, for example. Run it again, F5. Nope, not little. Okay, that's not too big, that's not too little. I'm going to go back to my 82. I like that. Okay. Okay. So this function, just because it's short doesn't mean it's not a good function, right? In this case, it's quite a nice little function. I can call it as many times. I could request at this point inputs where you guys provide me with the A and the B. It doesn't really matter, right? I mean, you can do that stuff at this point. I'm trying to keep it simple. All right, last one, part 3. I'm going to call this Boolean in Boolean. All right. Give some space here, but I'm not going to get it all off of the screen. Okay. Now in this case, guys, I'm going to go back and I'm going to fix something. I actually purposefully left it out at this point. Okay. Let's take a look at part 1 here. Okay. What I have is I've got a function that says is big, and it prints out whether or not that number was big. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't return any values, right? There's no value return on here. So if I want to use this function outside of itself, it's going to be useless to me. That information is going to be lost each time it runs. So I'm going to come back now and I'm going to put a return function in here, okay? So I'm going to, or a return statement, and I'm going to return the same thing that I typed up here, x times y greater than 1,000. Okay. So I have to specifically tell it what to return in this case. And the reason I'm doing that is because in this part 3, Boolean and Boolean, we're going to call upon both definitions that we already put into our program here, okay? And I will not have to actually write another function to do so. Okay. So we're actually going to be, we're going to have a little Booleanception here because I'm going to have a lot going on at the same time. Okay. So we've tested both of these and we know that they work. They can tell us if a number is big. They can tell us if a number is little, right? Now, what if I want to know if it's a medium-sized number, right? Well, you know, maybe what if it's just right? We're looking Goldilocks conditions here, right? Well, I want my porridge just right, not too hot, not too cold. So we're going to write a function, or not a function. I'm just going to write a Boolean statement or an if-then that'll check that out. Okay, so here we go. If is big, I'm going to put some numbers in here. We can make whatever numbers we want. 400, 320. Okay. Okay. So if big, or not if is big, or if is little, put some numbers in here, 30 and 20. Okay. All right, there's my if statement. So I'm calling two different functions. So it's going to test is big with these numbers, and it's going to test is little with these numbers or parameters. Okay. I'm going to print the following. It's not just right. Goldilocks would not be pleased. Okay. If that statement is false, I can put an else in here and say print that number is just right. Okay. So really what I'm testing here, guys, is if either of these are true, we know that the number is either too big or too little, right? So that's a Boolean, that or right there, okay? Each one of these functions is also a Boolean. So that's why I say I have a Boolean and Boolean here inside Boolean, right? So really it's thrice. We have Boolean and Boolean and Boolean. I know that sounds crazy, right? But that's what it's going to do. So if it's big or if it's little, then it's not just right. If it's neither of those, if both of those come back false in this case, then my false is that, hey, it must be just right, right? So you can run it and try it out. And it'll also demonstrate, guys, why the chatterbox function is annoying, because when I run this, guess what's going to happen? It's going to print out whatever my is big thing twice, right? And this one, it was that's not too big. Yep, that's little. And then here it is. That is a big number. It's not just right, right? So let's see if we can get this to be, you know, not a big number. What if I make this 3? There we go. Run it again. Now, still not just right because this is not a little number, I guess, right? Is little what it should be. 30 minus 20 is little, right? It's not just right. Is big. Yeah. Oh, maybe is it not working? Should be. Maybe I need an and statement there. Oh, no, that's true. I need that to be it is a little number I was making. That's the problem. Let's try this then. Let's make this 300. There we go. So it wasn't that the program wasn't working, is I was not reading my own work properly. There you go. That number is just right. There we go. I had to mess with that. I was trying to make this a little number, and the question is it little? So that would come back as true. So anyway, there you go. Surprisingly unsophisticated, fairly simple, but there is really a lot going on in this case. All right, guys, 1 minute. So make sure you save that thing. Tomorrow will be a work day where you can print that off and work on the different things.